I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at this interesting symposium. I'd like to start with sort of a simple conceptual overview of the brain-gut microbiome ecosystem. You can see that there's three primary areas that play a role in this ecosystem, so-called hubs or keystone areas: the gut microbiome, the brain connectome, and the exposome, which is the environmental influences. These influences are integrated in bidirectional communication loops between the microbiome and the brain, either directly or indirectly involving the immune system and the metabolic system. And the same is true about the exposome. The influences can directly influence the brain or indirectly through these various modalities, negative and in a positive way, through the microbiome and through the gut. Let me tell you a few things about the key features of a healthy ecosystem. So there are terms like the keystone species, richness and diversity, responsiveness to changing environment, resilience, resistance to colonization, and resistance against invaders. So keystone species. There's two ways that a microbiome ecosystem can be influenced. One is by the dominance of certain taxa that influences all the other microbial taxa. And through this general influence of one predominant taxa can influence the function of the microbiome. Keystone taxas do not have to occur in great abundance, but they exert their effect through influencing multiple other players within this ecosystem, can have a major influence on the overall functioning and composition. Here's an example. Grizzly bear, elephants, and the wolf are keystone species in specific environments. And that is important, that keystone species are specific to the ecosystem they're part of. A particularly interesting one is the sea otter, which interacts with the kelp forests. And there's a competitive interaction between sea urchins who are damaging to the kelp forests and the sea otters that feed on these sea urchins. So if the sea otter, the keystone species, disappears, there's an overgrowth of the sea urchins, which destroy the kelp forest. It's illustrated here, a healthy ecosystem with multiple bidirectional communication. And this is after the sea otter disappears, a impoverishment of connections, overgrowth of the sea urchins. If we look at our gut, there's multiple ecosystems going from the mouth all the way down to the colon. The environmental factors in each of these locations are different in terms of pH, oxygen, other organisms, temperature, and this leads to unique ecosystems. And each of these locations has its own keystone species. So if the keystone species disappears, there will be an impoverishment of this community, just as I've seen you for the sea otter. Let me say a few things about diversity. Many people are aware that there's been a decreasing in gut microbial diversity. Comparing here the diversity in indigenous people living on the upper Orinoco River in Venezuela, the Yanomami, with progressive decrease to individuals that live Western civilized countries. This is a progressive decrease around the world, depending on the context environment. If you look at this in terms of relative abundances, certain taxa have been going down significantly, whereas others like the Bacteroidetes have been increasing, and also the Verrucomicrobia. This has led investigators to coin the term the vanished taxa have been disappearing from our gut microbial ecosystem, and other taxa have taken over these niches. So this has been the transition from hunter-gatherers and foraging people to the agricultural phase and to the industrial phase. So this shows that these gut microbial ecosystems are highly variable, and they're influenced both by diversity, the presence of keystone species, and the relative abundance of different taxa. Now, these changes that have happened in our gut microbiome are not limited to the gut microbiome. They have happened in other ecosystems around our planet. For example, for the areas that are forested, for the savanna areas and for the oceans. You can see from left to right a transition from the original ecosystems dominated by wild animals and plants to a disappearance of the vegetation, great impoverishment of the vegetation, and the dominance of domestic animals for meat production. The same thing has happened in the savannas, and the same thing has happened in our oceans. So they all have experienced a similar, almost a parallel change as our gut microbial ecosystem has developed. So this planetary change in ecosystem diversity, richness, in the presence of keystone species has happened at all levels of the tree of life. What are the consequences of these ecosystem deterioration for human diseases? Here again, a summary of the causes that have led to our current state of impoverished gut microbial diversity: changes in lifestyle, particularly diet and chronic stress, changes in early colonization and medical practices, in particular the overuse of antibiotics. This has led to a impoverished gut microbial ecosystem, which interacts with our gut. In the gut, we have other cells. So we have the immune cells, and we have the nerve cells. This mismatch between an impoverished gut microbiome and our gut connectome, as we like to call it, has led to chronic activation of the immune system in the gut, which then spreads throughout the body and has affected most of our organs, including the brain. This has led to a state of what's been called the metabolic endotoxemia and low-grade inflammation and neurodegeneration in other organs in the body. What can be done to restore chronically compromised gut microbial ecosystems? Well, the current approaches, even though science has made tremendous progress in coming up with new solutions in the future, what we can do today is the adherence to healthy lifestyles, in particular to healthy dietary habits, shown here from the current standard American diet to a diet that's rich in a variety of plants, but also factors such as sleep, regular moderate exercise, and mind-targeted therapies all have been shown to influence the gut microbiome, either directly as diet or indirectly through the brain-gut microbiome axis. There's also an extensive use of supplementary pre- and probiotics, which currently is not evidence-based, but is certainly something that will be utilized, continue to be utilized. So future strategies to accomplish this is a comprehensive functional microbiome assessments. We're not quite there yet. We can characterize the microbiome composition, its function, but we're not there yet to make the appropriate recommendations. There will be novel customized pre- and probiotics, for example, reconstitution of keystone species, and there may even be something like early life microbial transplantation to influence the development of a healthy microbiome throughout adult life. So the take-home points: the gut microbiome is a community of interrelated ecosystems. Like all other life forms on the planet, the gut microbial ecosystem is under severe threat in the Anthropocene, time that humans are the dominant influence on the planet, with serious consequences for our health or the health of the planet. Chronic progressive alterations can only partially be restored by healthy lifestyles, including diet, sleep, regular exercise, and mind-targeted therapies. And planetary solutions are required to prevent further deterioration of many ecosystems and to improve health and well-being of us, of our gut microbiome, and of the planet. Thank you very much for your attention. If you're interested, I strongly recommend you to read one or both of my books that deal with this topic. Thank you.